So, as Gillian said, I'm going to talk about the biggest ideas in radio this year from around the world. But, you know, radio, it's weird because it feels like a million miles away from digital, which we've just been talking about. Yet, if you think about it, in South Africa, it's still the medium that reaches the most amount of people in this country. So it's the biggest medium in the country. It's also the oldest digital medium we have. And it's often seen as sort of the runt of the litter of mediums, you know. It's the poor cousin. It's the one that doesn't get the attention. Yet it's the medium that reaches the most amount of people. So it's just got these incredible sort of dynamics of good and bad that come with the medium. It's a medium that we all know as well. It's the only medium, actually, where you can be doing something else while you're listening to it, or while you're applying yourself to the medium. You know, print, you have to look at it. You can't do much else apart from that. Television has got audio and visual cues. Digital, you interact with. Radio, you do other stuff while you're listening to it. So it makes it an incredibly sort of hard medium to sort of emerge and come out on top of, because it's just like any other medium. As Ahmed said, it's based on a fantastic idea. It has to be something that people are interested in. So you have to create, it's a hell of a cliche, but everyone talks about theater of the mind. It has to do more than that, you know. It can't become wallpaper. And if you think about it, really, it's the fastest growing digital medium as well, digital radio. It's getting massive audiences in this country and around the world. And for such a traditional old medium, I'll take you through it a bit later, but there's massive innovation happening in radio. So we can't sort of ignore it. It's a cheap medium. People see it as a medium to put something up when you haven't got time to make a TV ad. And generally, we don't pay nearly as much attention to the production that goes into a radio ad that we do when we talk about a television ad. Probably because it's seen as the poor cousin. And so it's a really interesting medium as well. I'm going to talk about it a little bit now. As Gillian said, well, that's Can, obviously. I was really, really humbled and delighted to be invited to be the jury chairman for Can Radio this year in June. And it's really nice to go there. Mainly because it looks like that, but for a hell of a lot of other reasons. Is you know, as Gillian said as well, is that it's seen as the Oscars of the advertising industry. It's a place where this year there were nearly 12,000 delegates. At huge cost they go there, and a lot of those are clients who believe in the power of creativity and what it can do for their brands. So I think more and more so over the year, it's the most delegates they've ever had. It's an incredibly inspirational place if you're fortunate enough to ever go there. Apart from seeing incredible speakers from musicians like Debbie Harry was at the last one, so was Clinton, so were all of the great advertising and industry people. It was well represented by people like P&G and Unilever, who actually committed hugely in the fact, because they know that in the ever-cluttered environment, creativity is the one thing that can make you stand out from your competitors. And they're putting huge money into that. I think it was P&G who brought out Clinton to have a chat about it. So it was an incredible sort of honor for me to be able to do that, firstly from a South African perspective, and secondly because you sort of judge with all your peers from around the world. It gives you a context for how we do on the tip of the continent. We often get detached in South Africa. We don't see ourselves as part of the collective, even though, you know, every day we get brought closer and closer to global communication, particularly through digital. It gives you a context for where we stack up against the rest of the world, and it gives you a chance to talk to the best creatives in the world. So the most interesting thing I heard from one of my jurors was this is the reputation that South Africa has in radio for around the world. If you want to win a Grand Prix in radio, hire a South African. And you sort of you have to ask yourself why. There's a number of reasons. In 2007, radio got introduced as a category into Cannes. And since then, we've won 2 Grand Prix, and we've won golds every single year in between, and more than one. So we've garnered this reputation. And obviously going over there and being invited to be president, it made me think a hell of a lot about why. South Africa, it's important here, as I said, as a medium. And then speaking to the rest of the jurors, I found out that it's incredibly important in countries like South America, India, Southeast Asia, where they have similar dynamics as our country, and they have this discrepancy between so-called third and first world. So, you know, I think that why should we be so much better than the rest? I'll take you a little bit through the process that we went through. That's the jury that I led, and that's the view from my judging room, which is fantastic, not too shabby as well. But it was a really incredible experience, because if I look around, those 60% of those people, their first language is not English. We had Scandinavians, New Zealanders, Australians, South Americans, Americans, Canadians, Belgians, Asians, across the board. But what became apparent all the way through the judging up until the Grand Prix is that we all concurred when it came to what was great work and how we judged it. Also, what was incredibly sort of gratifying is that, you know, a lot of the entries into the category were in different languages. The way we voted it was that you get given an iPad, which you put your headphones on initially. You were judged over about 4 days. There were over 1,300 entries. By the way, it's the fastest growing category in Cannes at the moment, which also sort of confounded me a little bit when I first went there. Why has radio become so important in the world? But you stand there and you sit there and you judge an in-out scenario to decide whether the ads become a finalist. You listen to the ad on your headphones on the iPad, and if the ad is not in English, it's translated on a panel next to you, and it scrolls down in English. Some of the people provide English ones along with the ad in their own language, and you can listen to it so you can evaluate it. But what became clear very early on is that although many of us weren't English speaking, you immediately got the ideas that stand out. You immediately got the production values. You immediately got the craft, even though you were listening to it in a language that is completely different and alien to you. So I think, you know, having said that, why is South Africa the radio advertising capital of the world? I think for a number of reasons. And I think it's because we apply the same values to radio that we do to the other mediums, in some sense of the word. In our agency, we have an in-house radio studio. It gives us the opportunity to pre-production, experiment with ideas whenever we need to. We make sure that we have enough time to produce those ads. We spend a lot of time looking for the right voices and crafting them. We make sure that the ideas are never led by another medium. So the idea is the idea, and it should work in radio. Quite often, and this was in a chat with one of the heads of the UK Radio Advertising Bureau people who were on our board at the time, they said that quite often, still in the UK and America, and you wouldn't think so, but people develop the TV ad or the idea for the TV ad, and the client says, we need something out in 2 weeks' time or a week's time because the TV's not going to be on in the right time. Find a way to interpret that idea into radio. You can't think like that. It's too important in this country. Also, all of you have seen in this country the effects of, let me just think of 2 examples, names, Frank and Steve. Okay, those are 2 brands that are defined by their radio advertising. Okay, and you could love or hate them, but there's the only alternative to either loving or hating them is indifference, and that's what you definitely don't want. So radio still has that incredible power. I don't think the rest of the world has realized it yet. I think they're starting to realize that because you can notice it in how many people are entering it in Cannes and around the world. And also they're noticing that South Africa is doing fantastic work in this area. And it has got us this particular reputation. And they absolutely do believe that. And it's a really, really proud thing for us to know that our little radio studio, which started off as a service to creatives to do better radio for our clients, we now do all of our radio production in-house. And all it takes is for us to walk downstairs into that studio, and if that voice isn't right, we actually just try another voice. We use voices from overseas. It's that easy to ISDN it and do it. We can craft it the same way that we would apply to a television ad, which takes a hell of a lot longer. And that little studio has got is the world's top-ranked studio in South Africa, and so is the engineer, as ranked in the Cannes report. And it bore out again at Lurie's. It was Tony Granger was absolutely blown away by the standard of the radio, and that goes across the board. I was sitting on that panel as well, and honestly, the sort of level of the general level of the advertising in South Africa is better than the general level of the rest of the world combined. So it's absolutely fantastic, and I think that sort of, particularly on the client side, people are realizing that. We found ourselves in a situation with Mercedes-Benz. Talking about a global brand, this is how we roll, because generally the big idea for Mercedes-Benz is developed internationally. Yet the one area we have leeway in is in all of the other mediums. And it's an absolutely fantastic thing for us to, on a brand like Mercedes-Benz, where we've won 2 Grand Prix at Cannes, 1 at Lurie's, and done really fantastic work across all of the mediums, is that the first person to congratulate us when we were walking off at Cannes was the head of Mercedes-Benz worldwide. Because in the television medium, they hadn't been recognized as much. So it's definitely getting that particular prestige back again, in a sense. And I just think that we need to make sure that we continue to stay ahead of that trend.